in some ways, my superpower is just smiling, bringing people together, and just, finding ways to really.
Welcome to the F3 Podcast, where faith, family, and finance come together. Real talk, real stories, and practical wisdom to help you grow in every area of life. My name is Derek Hines, and I'm one of the partners here at Gaddis Premier. And with me today, I have a good friend. We'll call him the Renaissance man, Mike DeLauro.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here. Great setup, and just excited to talk about Durant Trails and open space.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. I know, we've been, working on DTOS, Durant Trails and open space since 2017.
That's right.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey, man.
It has, and I think that's what's fascinating about the story is just how it's really evolved, and also just the trials, the ups and downs, and just navigating those waters, I think. And really, I think it's been a very fulfilling journey too, because it's working with so many people and just trying to find ways to collaborate in those ways.
Yeah, no, I love the word collaborate, because that was sort of our heart from the beginning was, how can we collaborate with all the different entities, especially within the city of Durant, to create more open spaces, create trails for people to get out, enjoy nature, enjoy the outdoors, get active. And I know collaboration is tough.
It can be, it very well. And I think that's the other thing is that sometimes the personalities in the room, some people like the control factor, but I think that we kind of came at it with a different approach. And I think probably a lot of that maybe with our background as well, just kind of our upbringing, and we're pretty free-flowing, pretty lucid people. So I think that also was a huge help for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about how DTOS got started.
Okay.
So we were in Leadership Durant together, which seems like eons ago.
Right.
Right. What you were working at Vision Bank.
That's right.
At the time.
So it was really my first, I would call it more step into managerial, kind of that first officer type role.
Yeah.
And I remember our bank president at the time, who actually was the chamber president, said, hey, Mike, this is an opportunity for you to learn about the city, get involved, and just to network, to know the players. And I think really that was such an empowering decision, and just being able to be there and networking with everyone in the class as well. Some of my best friends have come there, and we've stayed in touch.
Yeah. I know the class, I'd been involved in some leadership programs in the past in different states, and didn't really have a good understanding of what that program was going to be like. But one of the things that did transcend that program, which was extremely surprising, is just all the relationships
100%.
That you develop.
And especially in our community, it's so tight-knit.
That's right.
And I think you kind of help develop that rapport, that bit of relationship building that really, especially as we journeyed into Durant Trails, that really kind of laid the foundation, and maybe for some people kind of maybe brought their guard down a little bit, like, hey, these guys, maybe we might need to listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been doing it so long.
Yes.
So I think that rapport has developed over time.
For sure.
2017. So in 2017, the chamber already had a trails committee established, which, so the genesis of Durant Trails, we kind of had the idea of developing Durant Trails and open space. I don't know, did we know about the Trails Committee at the time?
I think that's what's really fascinating, because when I recall it, I don't believe we really did. But I do know that Imagine Durant kind of took the lead at that, and this really kind of spurred on from this. And of course, one of our good friends, Tim Boatman, was really the galvanizer of sorts, which really brought the groups together. And and especially we had the groundwork, and I know Janet Reed was a huge advocate for us, and just super positive, and just believed in what we wanted to do and what our passions were. And I know even kind of prior to those days, even prior to my involvement with Leadership Durant, I had a little bit of experience with organizing a 501c3, going through those steps. And I got to give a shout out to Van Dixon and Dixon CPA, because they showed that pathway forward when it comes to, how to get this done. And I think we made some real strategic decisions early on that I think really helped us move forward. And one of those was just how we organized our bylaws, how we wanted to operate, And again, very lucid, very free flowing. And I think we had that immediate trust with, hey, if we're going to try to do something, let's make sure that we're setting this up right from the very beginning. And that way, when we kind of were able to merge the groups, it really helped us to be able to keep the momentum going that Imagine Durant built.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really think like the merging of the groups was paramount, because we had this vision, and then, getting to know Imagine Durant, Kara Bird, I think at one point, she was the one that was like, well, Derek, like, you realize we have a master trails plan.
Right.
It's like,
right.
I don't think I knew that. So really learning that Imagine Durant had done, a lot of work on the front end with planning and preparing and developing this plan, really allowed us to sort of take that plan and, merge the Trails Committee with Durant Trails and Open Space and see like, what are some things that we could accomplish in a very short period of time. And then also what are some of the larger overarching goals, which is one project that we have that is finally coming to completion.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that was really cool to see the merging of the two groups. And then I love it when, community members can collaborate towards a larger goal.
Yeah. And I 100% agree. And I think there was a moment kind of early on where we all had this feeling of like, hey, let's all throw our swords in the middle and let's join forces. And we felt like that. And I certainly agree that was something that galvanized us early. And then also even early days DTOS, when we started with the turkey chase, 5K. So those that may not know about it, that's every Thanksgiving morning. It was 2017 when that was our first run at it. And that was a very cool time, despite the tough, challenging weather. You remember.
We had some crazy years, cold, wet, and it's crazy that people just show up.
Yeah.
I mean, remember the year that it rained and we were on Cricket Smile Trail?
That's right.
And people were running through like knee-deep water through one of the creeks.
I do remember that. And I look back on that and I think, that's the community coming together, their passion for not only supporting our cause, but just getting out and getting active. And I think that there's an appetite for that, especially now. I feel it more than ever because of our growing community, what we're seeing down in Texas and that growth coming up.
Yep.
I think I've encountered people in different parts of Oklahoma, and they've brought up Durant in a very positive light. And I remember at one point when I first came here for college, at one point I remember hearing that Durant was one of the fastest growing cities in Oklahoma. And I think that's maybe died down a little bit, but I think that kind of helps me realize that, man, our organization can help be able to create that positive energy that we need in our community and provide people with opportunities to enjoy some of these low impact recreational events. Yeah. And in some cases, sports and just our trail development, some of the things we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would love, maybe not right now. Maybe we'll talk about the bridge project.
Sure.
But you talk about sports. I mean, like, how many hobbies do you have?
Yeah, I've got a lot.
We're still trying to get you into jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Well, I have a
huge affinity. You got the gear.
Yeah, I do. I've got I don't have a gi, but I've got the rash guard. I got all that. So,
yeah.
I'm a huge jiu-jitsu fan. I enjoy it. I watch a lot of it. And of course, I'm a big Eddie Bravo guy. I love watching some of his early days. We could have a whole podcast on jiu-jitsu. But, I think from an early age, I've always had this affinity for sports. I get that from my dad, from my grandfather. Yeah. Grew up playing golf and tennis, lacrosse.
Yeah, and you played tennis or golf at Southeast?
Yeah, both golf and tennis. See, that's what brought me here from San Antonio. And it was a very unique opportunity to be able to play both sports and represent the Savage Storm.
Yeah.
And just having that kind of diverse background. I mean, I grew up, my dad's from Minnesota. I was born in Panama. My mom's Panamanian. My dad's from Minnesota. So I grew up watching ice hockey. That's kind of where the lacrosse factor came in.
I never knew your mom was Panamanian.
Yeah.
That's how you say it?
That's right.
I didn't know that.
And so I speak fluent Spanish. That's my first native tongue. And, I think having that background and of course, growing up in San Antonio, there's not a lot of ice hockey, and so back in those days, it was, I played, my dad and they sacrificed a ton for me to get to Austin, Houston, Dallas, growing up playing ice hockey. So it was, once you get a little older, there wasn't any high school hockey. So that's where the transition into lacrosse. And of course, I've always played golf and tennis. And so when I came to Southeastern, that was just an opportunity. It was a shock, I'll say, just to come in from San Antonio here to Southeastern.
Durant.
To Durant, Oklahoma. And I tell you what, it's been very fulfilling. And just the experience that I had on campus, I was very, very hyper involved. Student government with our fraternity, in addition to playing 2 sports. So I know I always have people like, man, Mike, you do a lot. But I always respond back with, man, that's all I've ever known.
Yeah.
Always just stayed busy.
Yeah. What fraternity were you in?
Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity.
Okay. So one of our partners was at a fraternity in Durant. I don't remember which one it was. So I'll have to follow up with Dave after that. Do you know Dave?
Yeah, I do know Dave. In fact, kind of little factoid here, but I worked for Dave for a few years when I was at Landmark.
I remember that.
Early on in my career. And
Leanne.
And Leanne, that's right. Yep. So great people. And I remember some days where after hours, we'd play a game, Robert Kiyosaki game, the Rat Race. And
yes.
I remember having sometimes he'd bring out some of the clients to play, and we'd meet up in Denison and play. And it's just a great way to indulge in a friendly game.
Yeah.
You kind of start talking finance, and it really gets your mind thinking. You're playing a game, but you're almost having another conversation at the same time.
Yeah. That's a good game.
And it's fun. I've heard there's a second version of it. I haven't played it yet, but I'm sure you have.
I know I haven't.
And so
I've never played Rat Race.
You've never played it? Oh man, it's very fun. Very fun. I think that, that understanding and being able to, have and be around Dave like that, I think he was also a big influence for sure in terms of just his journey with his career. And I think that really kind of set the pace for me and kind of what I want to do.
Yeah.
So as I ventured back into the banking side of the banking world, it was just a great time to have them. Just a little factoid there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we do, we got started, Master Trails Plan, the Trails Committee merged together, and not too long after we started DTOS, we were approached by the city about a project.
Yeah.
And so was that 2017 or 2018?
I think that was right in between that 2017, 18.
Okay.
I remember you called me up. You're like, hey, Mike, got this idea for this bridge. We got to come up with about 90,000.
Yeah.
We got a couple weeks. What do you think? I think that's what I recall.
Yeah, no. So we were, so there was I believe his title was a project manager at the city, and the city had, so, there's so if you go across Chuckwall, there's a bridge. It's just a car bridge, and the city had an opportunity to get a grant from ODOT.
That's right.
But the city had to come up with matching funds. And at that time, I don't remember the exact situation, but the city was looking to our organization to sort of bring the community together and raise the funds for this project. Now, obviously, the project has morphed, grown, multiplied, mutated. Maybe mutated is the right word.
Yes.
Since we started, and the project got to be huge.
Yes, sir.
I restrict myself from trying to impersonate Trump there. Right? Huge. It's been huge. But so the city came to us and said, look, we, in order for us to accept this grant, like we're gonna have to come up with some matching funds. Would you be willing to help?
Yeah.
And I remember, I think Stuart, Tim, and myself were at that initial meeting. And so we all agreed to give I think it was $1,000.
Yeah.
So we all agreed to give $1,000 to show our support. And then we had to go out and raise the additional funds, which I think at that point they needed $25,000.
Yep. That's right.
And I know someone's probably going to fact check this. All these numbers are estimated to the best of my memory. So, we all ponied up about $1,000 a piece. And then we, called the community.
That's right.
To raise the remainder of the funds. And then after that, there was another. So after that 25, there was like 75 or 80,000 additional dollars that needed to be raised. And that was just a kind of a cool story of bringing the community together.
The one thing that was real vivid in my mind during that period of time was how fast the money moved, how fast we were able to get it done.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that's a credit to Tim and Stuart. I mean, they were the ones that really rallied the troops, if you will.
Yep.
And that made it happen. And I remember being concerned because I remember, and we may have even had this conversation like, hey, Derek, what do we do if
we wrote a commitment letter?
That's right.
To the city.
That's right.
And I forget, go ahead and keep talking. I'll try to find it.
Yeah. I just remember thinking like, okay, we're going to get this done. Positive energy. We can do it. You know, that's kind of how our mentality throughout this whole journey has been up to this point. And it's like, oh man, Derek, what happens if we can't do it? And then I thought, well, geez, is that going to like, are we personally liable for this? Like, what is going to happen? Is my wife going to kill me here? Like,
yeah.
What are we going to do?
Hey, babe, I just signed a commitment letter for $99,000.
And yeah, I just also remember too thinking like, okay, surely we're going to have a big partner come forward. And I remember it was a little silent, you know, for a minute there. And then all of a sudden it just, boom, it just came to us. And it's like, all right, we got it. Here we go. Remember, we ordered this big check from one of the printers.
Yeah, it's still in that room right back there.
Yeah,
I got it.
And we had a little reception. Of course, we went to a council meeting to present it.
To present the check.
And I remember, I think it was at that very meeting at that time, our mayor said, you know, hey, we really appreciate it, you guys. And the exact quote was, "You guys are the new movers and shakers in Durant." I remember that very vividly.
I don't remember that.
And I just, of course, knowing what we know now. In those early days, I mean, we were filled with joy, excitement. Like, man, this is going to happen. Like, the cranes are coming in. I don't know what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. And of course, then when I think the very next recollection in that time was when we got that first bid, and from the engineers. Mm. And I'm thinking when you told me, I was like, man, we're in the wrong industry here. I mean, how are we? You know, this is crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Yes.
And so I don't know, what were your thoughts? I mean, what did you feel like whenever we got past that first wave, a lot of excitement, and then from there?
Oh man, it was, I remember when we got the quote for the project, and I think it was close. I mean, it might've been close to $1 million over the grant.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, right. All right, guys, well, thanks for your effort, but we're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I know, even the city had a large part to play with finding additional grants, getting additional monies. And I know the city's relationship with ODOT, and we even had some relationships with people on our committee with ODOT, and just really coming at it from different directions to find additional funds. But when we found out that the project was really not feasible from a financial perspective, I mean, man, that just talk about taking the wind out of your sails.
I agree.
Because we had a lot of our committee members, that reached out to people personally to get funds to make that initial match, and then you start thinking like, well, what are we going to do now?
That's right.
Because we gave the money to the city, right? It's not like we don't have it anymore,
right? Well, and I think the other immediate thought that I had was, wow, we had so many individual donors.
Yes,
and it's like they trusted us with those funds.
Yep.
And you know what subsequently happened, and you might remember this too, but that was right in the midst of when we were trying to do and open up the new disc golf course at the lake.
Yep.
And I remember, hearing a few whispers about, oh, well, DTOS is, where's the bridge at? What's going on with that? Why would we give money for a disc golf course? And I remember thinking like, man, this is going to impact this other project.
Yeah. You're like, that's a really good question.
Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself like, well, hey, it was outside of our control. And there was a few factors that really were unforeseen. I mean, just not only the changing of some of those key stakeholders, some turnover within the city. And I know that also was a navigating time for us, because now we've got to get used to a new regime, bring them up to speed.
Yep.
And of course they've got their, irons in the fire with the city. And at that time, it was a very challenging time for the city, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
And so now, of course, we get lost in the shuffle a little bit.
That's right.
And I think the other piece to this that I also found kind of fascinating was not only that turnover that we were having to contend with, but just how the city was changing a little bit too, from not only, a council perspective, but also from a leadership perspective, the actual boots on the ground.
Yeah. And
so we had kind of a two-factored, piece there that we were kind of lost in that shuffle, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it's, I mean, when we look back, and I mean, now, the bridge is done. We haven't had a formal ribbon cutting yet. Ribbon cutting to be determined.
Right.
But the bridge is in its final stage, the final stages of completion, and they've got a wonderful, sidewalk that they've built up to the bridge over Chuckwaw Creek and then onto the Crooked Smile Trail. And in hindsight, like it really is humbling to be part of a community of people that just are resilient.
Yes.
Right. Never gave up. This is the vision. This is the dream. And like, we're going to be here through thick and thin. And we really are here to help the community.
Yeah.
And I think that takes time to prove it.
Well, and I think what this also proves too, and what we were able to do collectively, this has turned into a big win for the city.
I agree.
And I think that over the last 15 years, this is probably the biggest project that the city has taken on. And, of course, for us to be our first big one off the ground has been pretty huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know maybe we'll speak to a little bit, because I know there's a lot of things the city has to focus on, right? And Durant is a growing community, and whenever communities are growing, infrastructure is one of the main topics on people's minds.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people that don't understand the project might question, like, why would the city allocate resources to build a bridge instead of fix potholes on the streets? And I think that's a valid question.
Sure. But
in this case, like, the city hasn't spent any money,
right,
except for time and resources of people.
That's right.
But I think that's the beautiful part of this project is that we were able to partner with the city, so the city didn't have to outlay any financial capital for a project like this. And it's going to add a feature. Do you know what the total project came in at?
I think it was like 1.6 million.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah. So for, approximately $100,000 of matching grants, we got a 1.6, you said?
I think that's right.
A $1.6 million project for our city, for our citizens to enjoy. And that's phenomenal. Like if I was making an investment like that, I'd do that all day.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's just, we wanted to try and leverage an opportunity, and we were able to do it on behalf of the city. And I think that at least gives us some momentum moving forward, and just everybody who's come along the journey as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be here for hours talking about everybody who played a role in this. But I think what really resonates now that we're talking about it is just how it's a victory.
Yeah.
And now it's like, hey, what's next? What do we want to accomplish next? And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to, because I know we kind of jumped about 5 years through this story.
Yeah.
And I know at one point we got to like a complete standstill.
Yes.
And it took another, city manager.
Yes.
City council members.
Yes.
And so I think that in addition to, of course, President Newsom at Southeastern, his involvement, I think that really just kind of gave us poked and prodded this thing forward.
Well, it's on Southeastern property.
Yeah.
Right. And so they had to play a key role.
And I think now that we've got it, and it's like, we're looking back on it kind of smiling, and we didn't know if we were going to get there. And now that we're here, it's like, man, we got to celebrate it.
I would say for the most part of the project, we didn't think we were going to get there.
That's right.
And honestly, I know through our conversation, we thought this might be the death nail.
That's right.
For Durant Trails and Open Space.
That's right.
Because, we kind of put things, we kind of like screeched to a halt.
That's right. On
thinking about what do we want to do for the future, because we can't in good conscience, ask people for money.
That's right.
Or to donate to a project like this without delivering on the project.
And I remember that very vividly too, because during that phase of we're kind of in I'm going to call it our down period, there were some side quests that I was kind of on a little bit with the disc golf and that was a challenge in itself. But really that's a victory for DTOS as well, because they were the ones, that was the entity that we used initially and partnering with a lot of different local organizations. And so I think that even though it was a small deliverable when that project was done, I think that sort of, in a way helped us. Because it's like, hey, okay, bridge project, that wasn't in their full control.
Yep.
The disc golf course was, and knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think now, especially, really Lake Durant has turned into a destination of sorts. And now, of course, there's the new trail development out there.
There's trails, there's kayaks.
That's right. So
disc golf.
And that's now become, hey, let's take the family, the kids. We're going to go to Lake Durant.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because I live like 2 minutes from Lake Durant.
Well, what I have to mention this because I know at first, even the disc golf was met with a lot of resistance on when K10 and KXI came and did stories about that. Everybody was like, oh, well, there's a world-class disc golf course, but our streets are still what they are. And it's like, well, again, those are private funds. We had to come up with those dollars to have the course. And really, it's been a huge economic impact to our community.
Yes.
Our big tournament that we do every year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 300 to 400 people that come.
Yeah, and like really good disc golf players. You get disc golf players?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we've had people from many different countries. In fact, the last year's players from Mexico that came and won it. So, I mean, it's amazing when you think about it. And of course, now that's grown. We're into the year 6 of that event. Mm-hmm. And now it's on it's a national A-tier event, which that's a whole separate thing. So we're excited about that. And again, that's a small feather in the cap to DTOS. And I think that, organizing those events like that has been very, fulfilling too, because it's like, hey, we're bringing the community together. Not only, I mean, yes, it is disc golf, but it's like, hey, we're going to showcase our downtown. Let's showcase our restaurants. Yeah. We want people staying in these hotels. And, that'd be something that, as we progress forward with more trails and events, I'd love to be able to have more things like that DTOS can hang their hat on for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know there's even been, through the course of this project and our time, with DTOS, like there's other people that have come to town, right? So there's other organizations that are really excited about and motivated to create trails and walking spaces and bike paths and just increase the travelability or the ability to ride a bike in Durant.
Absolutely. Well, and I think one of those in particular is Durant Sustainability Coalition. Mm-hmm. And they, we're kind of, in many ways related because creating those alternative forms of transportation is something that's in our master parks plan.
Yep.
And, having those ways, I think and this is, society is general, at least in the United States, it's just, we have this over-reliance of traveling by vehicle, mm-hmm. by car. And it's like, man, it is nice to be able to go, when you go to a walkable city and you park one place and you're walking everywhere and you're experiencing it in a different light.
Yeah.
And I know this was a couple falls ago, 2023, we hosted a couple DTOS sponsored with Durant Sustainability Coalition, these walkabouts where we can walk our downtown, walk our 5th and 6th Street. And we had quite a few people from the community come for it. And, even at that time, I've been in Durant for a while now. I mean, coming here for college and, getting our roots into here. It's a different experience when you're walking around. And I would venture to say that most people in this community have not really experienced Durant in that manner.
Yeah.
And it opened our eyes to many things, of course, safety being one of them. But two, it's like, hey, what if we had some sidewalks or what if we had some bike lanes,
Yeah.
And just that potential is something that kind of got everybody's ears kind of perked up to maybe that possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, from a walkability standpoint, like Durant really isn't that safe, right?
That's right. In fact, we did a couple Main Street workshops where we really kind of put our Main Street under a microscope, both myself and Mark Messiti-Miller with Durant Sustainability Coalition. Mm-hmm. And what we found was that it's a remarkable fatality rate that we have Durant compared to
really
not only our state of Oklahoma, but on a national scale. And what we discovered through that is basically the city of Durant meets all the criteria to really move forward with a particular Safe Streets for All grant that really can help really address some of those concerns. And not only from a streets perspective, which of course is the big hot topic, but what about sidewalks? What about those extra features? And the one point I'll make on this is this was the very first walkabout we did on our Main Street walks. We were at the corner there of Roma, right? We're across the street from Roma's First Street. And we were just walking around that corner. And I mean, there's just cars just zooming through.
Yeah.
And we were crossing the street to walk like we were going to walk on the south part of the road over by Roma's. Mm-hmm. We almost got taken out. And of course, we had city council members there. So it was a really eye-opening experience for everybody. Like, whoa, we were close to being a statistic here. And of course, you don't want to ever think about it like that. But I think that really opened a lot of people's eyes to, hey, maybe we do need to consider some of these things. And I'm sure that's probably the next big project for the city is the Main Street how that's going to impact, I mean, of course, all the businesses, yours included.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, I know that's a very hot topic, and
it is.
And I'm sure, could be a good podcast episode too.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's jump into it. So what are some things that, like if someone is in opposition to something like this, like what are some of the arguments?
For one, I think parking has been a really fascinating one, because a lot of retail owners think that there's not enough parking.
Yep.
And I think that we actually put out a survey to all the guests that come. We had 3 different separate series of these workshops, kind of a part 1, a part 2, and then a conclusion. Mm-hmm. And in that conclusion, we actually gathered a lot of the statistics from those. And what we found was that it was really a mixed bag. There was a lot of people that said, hey, if there's parking 1 or 2 blocks away, that's fine. But of course, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the retail shop owners that are like, hey, we need the max amount of parking here. The other piece to this that was important was some people aren't all the way sold on bike lanes.
Yeah.
Wanting those types of alternative forms of transportation with our Main Street.
Yeah.
And actually early days of this there was a concept that would turn Main Street into a 4-lane. And so we explored the topic of what's called a strode, which is a combination of a street and a road. And so that kind of combo there. And so we really inform people that, hey, streets are what really bring value in a community. Road is for you're moving transportation left and right. You know, you're getting product from point A to point B.
Yep.
We're building wealth with streets. And so the idea is you're either a street or a road. Mm-hmm. But if you're a strode, which is what we currently have, it's kind of like...
Is that Main Street?
That's right.
Consider Main Street a strode?
That's correct. And that also is considered like the futon of mattresses.
We have a futon for Main Street.
And you know what has happened, and of course this would be an interesting topic just in itself, but really the way our town has grown the way it has.
Yeah.
I mean, we've explored topics about crosstown travel, and the big point that was really brought forward that was really enlightening was the question that was asked was, would it be worth it to travel across town 1 to 2 minutes slower to be much safer? Or would it be better to, hey, we're going to go ahead and travel faster, it's going to be less safe? And astoundingly, it was almost unanimous that everybody preferred a little slower, but much safer.
Yeah.
And so not only did we kind of explore those topics, but we looked at other cities in Oklahoma. One in particular was Guthrie and how they revitalized their Main Street.
Yeah.
And then the other was in Pawhuska. And, of course, they've got quite a few different major, tourist attractions with their Pioneer Woman.
Yes.
And how they've really galvanized around those ideas and really bringing more people into their community. And I think there's kind of lessons there that we can apply here in Durant. And I know Mark and I have an affinity for this. This is something that we really enjoy. And, really we just want to be, informative and advocates for knowing that, hey, there's a different way to think about these things. And some of these concepts, are not foreign to the United States. I mean, there are cities that have embraced that. And I know just this past weekend, I was in downtown McKinney. And I don't know if anybody has been in downtown McKinney, but it's just, it's a different vibe. There's a different, you can just sense it. And that sense of bringing people together in a little bit of a different way. Those lanes are a little tighter. You got to go slow.
Yeah.
And that's by design.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I love the idea or the concept. Like you said, it's about bringing people together.
That's right.
It's about creating a community that people can enjoy.
That's right.
And bringing people together to enjoy, the downtown atmosphere. We've got, and I love, so one of my, our office used to be on 3rd Street, and I could pretty much walk to wherever I needed to go. But, then we moved here to our Main Street location. And I love the idea. Like I can walk, I can get Japanese food, sushi, coffee's a block away, Mexican food, barbecue, Roma's Italian, pizza place, steakhouse, which is being currently renovated, but soon we'll have a steakhouse.
TBD, yeah.
Yeah, and I can walk wherever I need to go.
What was, this is a point that Mark brought up during this, because of course we had some people there that attended that were, kind of on the other side of this.
Yeah.
Hey, but there was quite a bit of activity that the actual Chamber of Commerce did with some of the concert series that they did in the fall.
Yeah.
And that brought a lot of people downtown.
Yes.
And the point that Mark made was, nobody had trouble walking.
And they're running across 1st Street. Cars are zipping by.
That's right. That's right. And the point he made was, hey, people were found a place to park and they found a way to get there.
That's right.
And so I think that, and of course, I'm sure some people would say, well, it was at night and it was, there wasn't all the same type of traffic during the day.
Yeah.
The point remains that, there's a way to do it, and just people have to embrace that idea of, they don't have a problem walking 4, 5, 6 blocks when they go to Walmart and they park way out. It's a longer walk from their parking spot to the entrance, from the entrance to the back door. So, it's just people don't think about it like that. And it's a different way to think for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking. So as we consider, so the bridge project is kind of wrapping up. We've got all the disc golf courses, Turkey Chase, which we took a couple of years off because the trails were in flux, but picking that back up probably this Thanksgiving.
That's right.
2025. Like when we think about the future, like what do you think are some projects that are sort of on the horizon?
Yeah, I know, of course, our big, piece is wanting to follow in that master parks plan, especially if that 5th and 6th Street.
Yeah.
That just is going to link so many key destinations to our downtown, not only the university, the elementary schools, the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
And just being able to have that opportunity. One of the great things that happened just this holiday season was the horse rides, the carriage rides that happened here downtown Durant, where everybody, got on board here, went up to the college, went through the U, came back down. Stuff like that would be tremendous.
Yeah.
To just be able to have stuff like that. And so I know there's a lot of hurdles. It's easier said than done. And really and truly, I think even just having that idea of, maybe it's something simple, right? Maybe we look at sidewalks there. How can we link, keeping the safety factor in mind? Because I know, again, 5th and 6th Street, a lot of people just drive extremely fast.
Yeah. One way, 2 lanes. Yep.
It's just, maybe there's a way we can look at that as an idea and that we can get behind. I know personally, and I know I hadn't shared this to you prior to this podcast, but, I kind of want to leverage some of the skills that I've been developing here the last couple of years with media and creating, updating our website to being able to have it. So if someone comes to Durant, they click on our durantoktrails.com, boom, they're going to look at where's all these trails at.
Yeah.
And I spoke with Jenna Lee, who's one of our board members, and she was all, super encouraged about that. Like, hey, Mike, we could do a little videos, fly the drone out so people can see what's here. Because I think that's maybe the number one question we get on our Facebook is, hey, where are the trails?
Yeah.
Like there's some people that still, they have no idea.
Yeah.
So I think that's an opportunity that we have to really showcase what we have and, potentially look towards some of those enhancements.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I know we need, we've talked about, getting all of our trails on All Trails and different apps where people find trails that they can walk or run on. And so what are some of the hurdles for 5th and 6th? Is that a hot topic?
Well, I think definitely we have all the homeowners that we haven't yet really gotten that. We haven't heard that side of it yet, but I think that's coming.
Yeah.
And I think definitely just the safety factor, and I know Mark has drawn up, of course, he's a former architect engineer, so he has several ideas. And so there's different ways on feasibility and also just keeping in mind, like, hey, we want to be safe. If I'm going to have my wife and daughters in here and maybe we want to get on a bike and ride up 5th and 6th Street.
Yeah.
We can't have cars just zooming by, 40, 50 miles an hour. And it happens, so I think that is going to be a hurdle in itself. It's just the existing 5th and 6th Street.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the ideas that may come from this is, hey, maybe this is a 2-phase project. Maybe it's, hey, we're focused heavily on 5th.
Yeah.
And maybe it is a sidewalk that's off the, the road. And then maybe a phase 2, which, as we have we have a victory,
yes,
then we can look to 6th Street, so maybe that might be an idea as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. So, sidewalks, we don't have a lot of sidewalks in Durant.
Especially on 5th and 6th Street, there are areas and there's spots, but there's, quite a bit of overgrowth. And then just, I think part of that occurred just with the natural growth of our community. Some of the code didn't require sidewalks. So it's like, we've got to really tighten the screws on making sure that, hey, if there's new development, we got to have the sidewalks. And actually there was a pretty big debate on this on the university project. That was a big one that the city took. And one of those was the sidewalks there. Do we really need sidewalks? And so of course there's a debate.
I see people walking down those sidewalks all the time.
I agree. So I think it's one of those where if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And people will utilize it.
Yep.
And I know it's hard to quantify that, especially for some that might question hey, are these dollars really? Because I'm sure, just like we saw with the bridge project on Choctaw, we think, oh, it's just sidewalks. That shouldn't be anything that, huge of a cost. It probably is.
Yeah.
We just don't know it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So on 5th and 6th, like what's like the next step that we could take?
I think the big piece to this is probably bringing in some key stakeholders and just, maybe it is hosting another walkabout where we can experience it. I know there's segments, especially on 5th Street, where there is a bike lane.
Yeah.
But it's just it's unusable. If someone really tried to bike there, they wouldn't make it. I mean, it's just what it is.
Yep.
So I almost feel like maybe almost creating a little bit of a list of maybe it's some wants and really, if we have to boil it down a little more, like, hey, what's a little bit more feasible for what we can take on? And then frankly, it's going to require us to maybe get creative with funding and taking a little bit of a step towards the grants. And maybe it is the Safe Streets for All that we can utilize. I'm sure that there may be some other grants through ODOT that we could maybe look towards as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. And partnering with like Mark and his organization and, Chamber of Commerce, the city, all those entities.
I think in what's come through this, especially as we're nearing the completion of the bridge, is that the city has turned to us and said, hey guys, what's next?
Yeah.
And I think we have created that momentum, but also know that there's a lot of the council members that really believe in what we believe in.
Yeah.
And I think that they've realized like, hey, you know what, maybe we should look at some of these things. And if it makes sense, within the confines of the financial budget that the city's in, but I 100% agree that we're going to have to leverage funds again. I mean, to think that the city's just going to come in and start paving sidewalks is not realistic. I think we're going to have to leverage some dollars and I think we're going to have the team in place to be able to do it. And especially if we can, have some of these key stakeholders involved again, and hey, we go again, right? We throw our swords in the middle and there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exciting.
I'm going to pose that same question to you because I know you said, hey, Mike, what do you think is next?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious as to maybe if you have some ideas or goals or maybe you're kind of what you foresee for DTOS.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it really has it's sort of all centered on the bridge, right? Once we get the bridge completed, we can sort of tout that as like our keystone type project that we've completed.
Sure.
And I think, once we have a ribbon cutting, I know we're throwing around some ideas about a frigid 5K or, some kind of run, because we'll probably do the ribbon cutting in maybe early February now, early to mid February, which who knows, it could be -5 or it could be 70 degrees in southern Oklahoma. But I think really using the bridge project as that momentum
for sure
to get those key stakeholders at the table again and figure out what the next steps are. And I definitely, know the Chamber of Commerce, some of the council members. I know we have support from the mayor of Durant now. She's been great in supporting this project. So what I say, key contributors. So, Mark, the chamber, city council members, and just sort of having a collaborative conversation about what needs to happen next. I do think we need to do the best we can on the front end of answering all those questions, the concerns that the homeowners might have.
Sure.
I don't live on 5th and 6th Street, so I don't know what those concerns might be.
Right.
But really hearing those concerns and sort of, I think, this project was key in proving to those stakeholders that we have the community's best interest in mind.
Absolutely.
But now really moving forward with convincing the community that we have their best interest in mind. And I think that's really the next step is how do we start to engage the community in such a way that they understand that, hey, like this is in everyone's best interest.
Absolutely.
And how do we collaborate to get these projects completed?
I'll share I'm going to call it a case study, but this is an event. This is actually this past winter that Durant Sustainability Coalition partnered with the Texoma Board of Realtors, and they had this really cool space that they brought in right there between 4th and 5th Street, right up in there, where it just created this outdoor dining experience. And so that was met with an immense amount of, fight, if you will, because people were like, what is this? Wow, we don't need this. Why is this happening? So I would say, and this is maybe a personal challenge to myself and for us to consider, but when we go about this next project, we really have to control the narrative in some ways. Yeah. And I feel like we have the ability to do that. And like I said, leveraging some of my skills with media, and we can put out the content that we feel like can present both sides of the story and why they should jump into this, why they should believe this and believe us again. And so I think whereas with that project, it was a great idea. I just think the execution of the why wasn't really addressed until that was fully underway. And I think maybe what we can do and maybe learn from in some ways is what I call the silver platter theory. We've got to put it on a silver platter, not only for the community, for the city, for all the key stakeholders, but frankly for those homeowners, because I'm sure there's going to be some concern there potentially on, hey, this is, I got to be able to back up. I got to use this road to get to and from work. Yep. So I think that's probably a personal challenge. And I think we're going to be able to execute that really well. So
next steps are, get the ribbon cutting done, maybe have some sort of like celebratory event, whether that's a 5K or some sort of fun run.
Sure.
And then start to get key stakeholders engaged again.
Absolutely.
About what the next project is. And then really craft the narrative around why would we do this before we start the project. Sure. So really try to engage the community, get them excited and in as much support of the project as we can.
Absolutely.
Before we move forward. And as we know, like even with this last project, like this is not, it's going to take time, right? These projects take time. I mean, anything worth doing takes time.
100%. And I think that, I always think back to the experiences we had, and now it's kind of sharpened us a little bit to maybe some of our realistic expectations.
Yeah.
And how we probably can navigate the waters again.
Yes.
And knowing that, hey, some of the people we're going to start the project with, just natural attrition.
Yep.
We're going to have to navigate those waters again. If there's some turnover with council members or new city manager. Yeah. And just, the more momentum we create on the front end, I think that's going to help propel us and get us past the finish line.
Yeah.
And I think this time maybe we may be able to have a little bit more, get our teeth into the project a little earlier.
Yes.
Whereas we're not maybe at the mercy of ODOT or in this case, the city.
Yeah.
So we can maybe, push it along the best we can.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, especially with the city council, like there's just naturally attrition, right? Because city council members are voted in, and I don't know exactly what their term length is, but I really am excited about the current council that we have. And I know we know some people that are on the council, and we knew people that were on the council whenever this other project started, but really kind of, trying to get their buy-in and engage them with the project. And I think we already have most of that, but really try to align the vision that we have with the vision that they have for the city. And I mean, I can't imagine, I think sometimes being a city council member is probably a very thankless position.
And I know they get stretched in 1,000 different directions. And, I think back to, just the partnership that we've had with Durant Trails, but just utilizing our natural skills. I mean, we're salesmen at the end of the day, and we utilize it for our interests, which is, in this case, it's, low impact recreation and nature awareness and being able to provide and improve the quality of life. And I know that's what brought us together in that very early days and what really kind of keeps us going. And I think that the sales, the wind that's coming into our sales is really going to be helpful because now, maybe we can partner with some of these other groups now, whereas now we were kind of in the back seat. Now we can maybe be on our front toes here.
Yeah. Take more of a prominent role in partnering with other entities.
I think that there's lots of opportunity too. I mean, one other idea that I've had is, maybe we look to maybe have a bike event. Maybe it's a family bike, up 5th and 6th Street, or, maybe we find another area where we can do stuff like that. And again, just something low impact, something that everybody can do. And just at the end of the day, we want to have fun. I mean, that's what this whole thing is. And, Yeah.
And I would love to have some mountain bike trails.
I'm right there with you.
I would love it. We bought, it was last 2 Christmases ago, we bought all the kids mountain bikes, like legit, real mountain bikes, gear shifters, everything. In fact, this weekend, I think, my kid, I've got two young boys, as you know. I mean, they've just like destroyed their bikes, right? Like these things. So this weekend, I think I'm going to replace a tube in a bike. like redo all their brakes, get those things kind of tuned up and shined up. And there's some really good trails down in like the Dennis and Sherman area.
Seen that, yeah.
Ardmore has some great trails over there. I would just love, especially with the kids, it's really easy for them to ride a bike.
I agree.
They're little, but they can still ride the mountain bike trails, and it's just such a good like family.
Oh, I agree. And I know, that pump track would be something if we had something in Durant.
Man, that would be awesome.
Really cool. And maybe, who knows, maybe that might make it into our wish list of sports.
Yeah.
And who knows, I'm sure just like we may end up with a big kind of overarching project.
Yep.
We're going to have our side quests. And I know that, hey, it's something that we can find our interests and work towards. And I just think about it too. My daughters are, 3.5 and they're growing up, and I'd love to be able to take them out and experience different things here locally without necessarily having to travel to Dallas or to Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And I think there's, I always tell myself, why not us? Why can't we have this?
Yeah. And there's no reason why we can't.
I think that we can absolutely do it. And I know Ryan Brewer, who's the Parks and Rec director, he's definitely, seen that, and especially with the bridge project. But now that we've been kind of engaging with him a little bit, he starts to kind of see, hey, how can we kind of merge our master parks plan to his master parks plan into what we're trying to do with the master parks plan.
Yeah. So on a side note, you got to get your kids a Strider bike. If you ever a Strider bike.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna put my phone here.
So it's a balance bike with no pedals.
Oh, interesting.
So you can put their feet down, but what it does is it teaches them to balance.
Interesting.
And so whenever they get pedals, it's like they're copy and paste.
Wow.
They just jump on and start going. We had all of our kids start on a Strider bike.
Okay.
And it's amazing. Like there's no, I'm sure you remember learning how to ride a bike.
Oh, sure.
Right? Like road rash.
Yes.
Is just par for the course.
Yes.
I learned how to ride a bike. So I grew up in the country, gravel roads, and you just crash and burn.
Yeah.
But with the Strider bike, you can put your feet down, you learn to balance, you learn to turn, and so by the time you get pedals, it's plug and play.
One idea that I'll share with you, and I had just a brief conversation with Jenna Lee about this, and this is another kind of one of our ideas for the fold. But years ago, Durant it was usually once in the spring, what was basically a bike bus. So for those that don't know what that is, it's where, parents drop their kids off, and some parents will go along too, but there's administrators, of course you got the PD, the fire department, everybody, they close off a couple streets and you bike about 6 blocks to school, and it's just once in the spring. So it's a big kind of convoy of bikes coming in. You meet real early in the morning, drive up to school, and it's kind of this community thing, right? It's a lot of people at stake to do this. But I asked her, I said, man, we should do a bike bus. She's like, Mike, that has happened in Durant. It's just since the pandemic, it hasn't really picked back up from that.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that's an idea that we could partner, and maybe we get Durant Sustainability on board, because something like that, I know when our girls get old enough, like, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
And just to be able to have that, as an option. I know it's really, really popular, in the Northwest, up in that area. So, hey, why, if they're doing that in Oregon and Seattle and all, hey, why not here in Durant? We can do it. And when Jenna Lee said, hey, Mike, actually, we've done that before. And of course, her kids have done it. I was like, well, hey, that makes it even easier to sell, because if it was once done before, we can do it again. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a bike rodeo?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
We had bike rodeos growing up. And basically you bring your bike, and we had them at the school. We had a huge playground. Basically, you bring your bike, they fix it for you.
Yeah.
So tune it up, get the brakes all going. And there's like a little obstacle course that you get to ride and navigate your bike through. And those things were awesome.
Well, I'm going to maybe leak this a little early here, but Durant Sustainability Coalition is planning one later in April.
Okay.
And Mark said, hey, Mike, is this something that DTOS would be interested in? I was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
I participated in that as well, bike rodeo growing up, and it was the most fun ever. And it's just, I always remember kind of during those days, like, man, I need to get out and practice, get ready for the bike rodeo. And so, just little things like that. I call those little side quests.
Yeah.
That, I know there's some involvement with that, but again, I feel like that kind of helps continue the momentum, build the rapport, and again, provide, our kids and administrators an opportunity to, hey, bring everybody together. We're going to do this event. Yeah. And make it really fun for the kids.
Yep. I think that's awesome. So you talk about side projects. I think one of the most fascinating things about you is all your side projects. So like, what's new? Like, it can be associated with Durant Trails Nova Space, not associated, but like you've always got something cooking.
There's definitely a lot going. Well, here lately, probably the last 12 months, I really made the decision to pursue media a little bit harder because, and we talked about this earlier before we started the podcast, but just being able to tell your story is such a powerful thing.
Yep.
And so making the investment into, some of the equipment to record a podcast and be able to film things. And specifically, the approach I've taken was for disc golf. We've been able now, my little business, we've really grown it, and we're covering some of the big tournaments that are happening, not only in Oklahoma, but, we're going to go to Arkansas State's championships in Jonesboro. We're going to be down, actually this weekend, we're down in Dallas.
Yeah.
filming.
So we say cover it. Like, you're filming it?
So yeah, we're filming it. So we have basically a crew of guys that we go out and we film it. So we have, everything's done remotely and it's all post-produced. And so it's been funny because first, when we first got started, I really didn't have any idea what to even buy, what to even do.
Yeah.
But now, and it's funny because at first, and I'm sure anybody out there, you kind of start gear chasing, like, oh, we need this, we need that, I need that. Well, of course, fast forward to where we are today, and it's like I've gotten the setup down. Now the next kind of segment brings in is like, okay, we got the content. Now how do we edit it? How do we put it out? So learning that side of it has been a challenge. But that's something that I've been able to leverage those skills with some of the stuff we've done with DTOS. And
yeah, definitely.
One of the things we did, with Durant Sustainability Coalition, we recorded a couple little 30-second, commercials to promote some of our workshops. And so leveraging those skills, I think, is something that's powerful. The other big side quest that I've been on is with Toastmasters here in Durant.
Yes.
So that's been something that I'll have to count my ahs and ums here after the podcast episode. But I
don't really count mine.
I think that's really helped me just develop into just being able to speak fluently to what we're doing. And that's so powerful because when I first started in public speaking, my confidence level really wasn't there. And so I feel like there's a lot more that I can do to get better. And so one of my long-term goals is to become a distinguished Toastmaster. So I'm about halfway towards it. And, and it's great. I think that's something that here in our community, again, another way for people to develop their professional skills and just, a skill that maybe some people think, oh, I'm good enough at public speaking, but in all actuality, they probably...
I don't know anybody that thinks that.
I think I know what's hard about it. And I always find myself, my wife's always like, Mike, you're selling these crazy things to people that really are difficult. Like, when we started lacrosse, that's a sport that's foreign to our area. Yeah. And, people are like, no. In fact, the very first time I called the city to reserve a field to do a lacrosse practice, I said, oh, we need a lacrosse, place to play lacrosse. Oh, we don't have any lacrosse fields. And it's like, not what I even asked. I said, I need a field to do. And then we get, people are like, oh, is that like polo or y'all bringing horses? Like, people don't know what lacrosse, people think, oh, lacrosse, is that like a religious thing? Is it lacrosse,
Yeah.
So, and then of course with Toastmasters, it's like, okay, Mike, do people really want to practice their public speaking? And I'm like, man, it's so much more than just that.
I agree.
And I feel like there's so many benefits to it. Even just if you're in the room, you're not even speaking, just observing. Yes. And so we've got a lot of ideas with that. In fact, we're leveraging kind of the podcast idea with Toastmasters. And so those are just a couple of the, we'd be here till 7 p.m. with some crazy ideas that I've got.
Well, I think Toastmasters is particularly interesting because, most people would rather die than speak publicly, right?
Yes. It's one of the top fears that people have. Of course, heights is up there, but public speaking is a pretty close second in the top 3, I would say. Yeah.
So what's the format and structure of Toastmasters?
So we have meetings. It's every second and fourth Wednesday over at Kiamichi Technology Center here off of Main Street. The way it works is it's really simple. We all have roles within the meeting. So there's someone who's the Toastmaster, who's kind of like the leader, if you will, of the meeting. But then you have 2 people, usually it's 2, that have pre-prepared speeches that they bring forward. And then you have evaluators. And so you have a 5 to 7 minute speech that you prepare various different topics. And you have what's called a pathway. So it kind of helps guide you on, hey, your speech this time is about tonality, or it's about gestures, or it's about, there's different basically speeches that you complete. It's almost like Boy Scouts, like you're going towards Eagle Scout, but of public speaking. Yeah. Kind of how I describe Distinguished Toastmaster. And the one segment in the meeting that I think is the most important is a segment called Table Topics. And so someone else comes forward and asks a question to the room. And it can be a very simple question to something that's very abstract. And then you get called on. It's random. You don't know if you're going to get called. And you've got to come up forward and deliver a 1 to 2 minute speech about any given topic. So you have to really think on your feet.
Yeah.
And then also you have to be able to get through it to qualify your speech. And then every meeting, there's a little vote on who had the best table topics.
Okay, so you say qualify your speech. What does that mean?
Yeah, so you have to hit the time requirements.
Okay.
And you have to cover the topic. So if you get asked about elephants in Mozambique and you start talking about whatever else, ice hockey in Finland, probably not going to qualify. What's really fascinating, when I first got into Toastmasters, I thought I was a pretty decent speaker, but it's really sharpened me up. And I've been many of times, whether it's a board meeting, just in public, and I get spontaneously asked a question.
Yeah.
It has really helped me to start to develop those thoughts earlier, think a little quicker. And so also with Toastmasters is the very first time I gave my table topics, you have to go a minute. So there's someone timing you and there's cards so you know if you've hit that minute. I thought I hit the minute and come to find out it was like 17 seconds. So again, it's really humbling when you first start, but it's very rewarding. We've had quite a few people who are, various different walks of life from young to older. Yeah. And it's a way to really stay sharp and just being able to network with those people. And we've got some great mentors in the club that are distinguished Toastmasters. So yeah.
So what if you, so do you get like points if you qualify a speech? Is there like a system?
Yeah. So you have basically where if you qualify a speech, you can count that towards your, what you call pathways. And so those pathways are how you kind of progress if you want level up to your, white belt and to the, to the next step.
Yeah.
And so, and then you have different speeches that you give and various topics. You start off, when you first start, it's an icebreaker speech about yourself. So it's usually a pretty easy, everybody's pretty good about talking about themselves.
Yep.
And then it progresses from there. And some of the ones that I felt like some of the most difficult ones actually for me were I had to give a speech about technology and how we have our meetings are hybrid, which means that they're in person, but you can also attend on Zoom.
Yep.
So there's quite a bit of equipment that I have to bring out to be able to execute that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my speech was how to set up the meeting. And meanwhile, I have to explain it to a group that doesn't have any real idea about technology in general.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the most difficult speeches that I've had to give. But some of the others that have been, about leadership and just, professional development have been really interesting because you prep and you prepare and then you deliver.
Yeah. So if you get hit with what if you get hit with a topic you know nothing about?
That's what makes it tough. And that's what you've got to develop, that ability to speak on it. Even if it's you're not able to really spit out facts, in the case that I gave, if you're having to talk about elephants in Mozambique, it's hard to do that. You can't really just sporadically come up with that, but you just have to be able to have the confidence. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that if you have the confidence to really speak through it, then you become almost untouchable in a way.
Yeah. Elephants in Mozambique.
We actually haven't had that one as a table. I'm going to have to use that at our next meeting.
It's going to happen. Cool, man. Well, Mike, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Like, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It really has been, it's been fun.
Absolutely.
Since 2017, getting to know you through Leadership Durant, all the stuff we've been able to do, with our community and within our community with DTOS. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
It's just been really exciting to see, and I'm really excited for the future as well.
I agree. And I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to be able to bring people together. I feel like that's in some ways my superpower, is just smiling, bringing people together, and just, finding ways to really add wealth to our community. Yeah. And in some ways also, just being able to improve the quality of life. And I think that that's something we're both passionate about, and we're appreciative of those that support DTOS, and, we're excited about the future.
Yeah, I am too. Well, thanks for joining us. We hope you appreciated this podcast. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe.